Hello, everyone. You're welcome to this webinar. This is the sixth week of the Academy, and today we are going to be handling branding part one and creating your brand identity. So you're most welcome, everyone joining us from West Africa, from Central Africa, from East Africa, and from South Asia. The Nepal team joining us. I see Lungwe. Good morning, good day. Everyone joining in, you're most welcome to this webinar. And my name is Bonnie Mark, your host today. For those who have just joined in, this is WMI Academy Week 6, and the topic for today is branding, part 1, creating your brand identity. I'd like to take the honor to welcome the presenter today. Our presenter today, let me just take a quick intro of our presenter today. Our presenter today is Madame Wemimo Onikan. Wemimo Onikan is a communication specialist with over 10 years of experience in the non-profit, public, and private sectors. Currently, she works as a manager of internal communications for Nutrition International, a non-governmental organization based in Ontario, Canada. Onikan helps leaders and organizations strategically communicate with their audiences, showcase the impact of their work while building visibility for their brands. She is an expert, and when Onikan deploys this 12 years experience of our knowledge in strategy, people's relation, storytelling, and media engagement into supporting organizations to achieve their goals by communicating clearly and effectively with our various target audience. She will be talking to us about creating your branding, and this is the first session of branding today. And I know we shall love the passionate person who communicates and creates the brand of an organization, as I mentioned, and I'd like to welcome her to speak to us this beautiful day. And I kindly believe that you will enjoy the session. Madam Wemimo Onikan, you're welcome to speak to WMI scholars who are right online right now.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Hello, everybody. I am delighted to be here, to be speaking with you and engaging with you all at this time. I believe that you're joining from different time zones, so whether it's morning or afternoon or evening, such a pleasure to have you here. Today, I will be starting a two-part series on branding, and we'll be having conversations around the importance of branding. Why is this important? If you are a small business owner, or if you run a nonprofit organization, or whatever the kind of organization you run, or even if it's your personal brand, we'll be talking about why it's important and the key things you need to do to ensure that your brand is on point. I'm going to be looking into the chat, and I'd like this to be interactive. So it'll be great for me to know those in the room today. If you can just put in the chat. Oh, I see lots of people already. I see Sospita from Tanzania. Hi, Sospita. I see Patrick from Rwanda, Anthony from Uganda, Charles from Rwanda. Beautiful. There's Patrick, oh my goodness, lots of people from different places. It's really exciting. I see Mayam from South Sudan. Hello, Mayam. Hi, Fred from Kenya. Hi, everybody. Such a pleasure having you here. Manethi from Lesotho, you're welcome. So do you want to put in the chat real quick? What exactly do you do? Do you run a business, or do you run a nonprofit organization, or do you work for a nonprofit organization? What do you do? You can just put that in the chat as well. Put that in the chat. Let's see. Victorina from Uganda. Thank you. Victorina, do you work for, do you run a business? Do you run a nonprofit or a CBO, community-based organization? Fantastic, nice to see that, James. Oh, Miriam runs an NGO. Oh, NGO. I plan to start an NGO, Fred, great. But it's still in the branding phase. Okay, great. So you're in the right place, Fred. So you start getting the key information you require for you to kick it off. Oh, I see. Okay, so Peter, you run an NGO. Rogers, you plan to start an NGO. Okay, that's great. That's a good one. I see. What else do I see now? I see Lovetta. I have started. Oh, Lovetta, you started a community-based organization. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Oh, I see. Fode, you run a microfinance company. Wow, that's a big one. Okay, planning to run a CBO. Fantastic. So I see lots of a mixture of experiences here and lots of exciting things that you know, lots of exciting experiences that you bring into the room. So as we move along, feel free to share your thoughts. Okay, share your thoughts, share your ideas. If there's anything that that's coming out to you strongly in the course of this conversation, feel free to share that. Okay, can we please share the presentation on the screen? If you can do that, that would be fantastic. Right, awesome. So today we're talking about branding. Like I said, this is a two-part series. So the first part today will be focusing basically on the whole idea behind creating a brand identity and how you can start that work before you then kick off your branding itself. Next slide, please. Introduced me, and when I say that you've introduced, most people have introduced themselves in the room. Super exciting to have you. Next slide, please. All right, so today, here's what the presentation is going to look like. Right, so we'll start first with a bit of branding, like why branding? Why, you know, what exactly is branding? Because sometimes it's easy to throw words around and say, okay, branding is this. I think branding is that. I think a brand is so and so. But it's important for us to define what branding is, because then that way we're able to identify the key things we need to do to achieve that. And then we're going to be talking about why branding is important. What's the big deal? You know, why should we, what's the fuss really about a brand? You know, why can't I just start my business and run with it? Do I need to create anything special to define my brand? We'll be talking about that today. We're talking about also how you define your brand, when you define your brand, you know, at what point should you really start that process? We'll also be talking about some brand types. And as we start to talk about the brand types, you can even start to think about your brand, think about your organization, whether it's your CBO that you're planning to start, or the one that you've already started, or the microfinance bank, or you know, whatever it is. You're able to then identify where exactly your brand fits in the different types of brands. We'll also be looking at you know, for you to define your brand identity. One of the things I want you to take away from this meeting is you doing that deep work, much more than the presentation. It would mean you thinking and reflecting and actually defining what your brand identity will be moving forward. We'll also be looking at components of your brand identity, and then we'll be taking some questions and answers. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to throw this to us, and I'm loving this class already because I see this, you know, I have interactive students in the room, which is great. So what exactly is branding? Before you go to the next slide, I want you to put in the chat, tell me, what do you think a brand is? So my question is in two parts. One, what do you think a brand is? And two, then what is branding? Let me look into the chat and see, do I have any comments there? What do you think a brand is? What do you understand by a brand? And what, oh, someone says it's the art of influencing perception. Branding is the art of influencing perception. Any other? What is a brand? It's the branding is the art of influencing perception. Oh, someone says Akim, I see a brand is an impression that a company or product leaves in the mind of consumers. Fantastic, great. Fode, oh wow, a brand is beyond a name. It is actually what your prospect think of when he or she hears about your brand name. Exactly. It can be a name, a logo, color, communication, even visual appearance to the public. Oh my goodness, you guys we should flip this over. You should be taking this session right now. But that's fantastic. Oh, Napiok, I see an intentional effort geared towards creating influence. I love that. Today we have lots of influencers, right? Lots of people who are doing things to change perception and influencers on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, in different places. Abdul, the promotion of a particular product or company by means of advertising and distinctive design. Great. And I see James, it's a promotion of your idea. These are lovely, lovely ideas. Simply the image of a product, business, or institution as a whole. Jane, that is correct, absolutely correct. Charles, a brand is your identity. I totally love that. So you all have, the initial understanding of what a brand is. Let's move to the next slide. Let's see what the slide really says. So branding, according to Finn, it's the art. It's to start with, it's an art and a science. Okay, so there's the nitty-gritty around it. How do you create this brand? There's the art to it, the colors, all of the nice things you put together to make it look nice and appeal to your audience. But there's also a science to it. So it's the art and science of influencing perception about a product, a service, or an organization. It could even be about a person. I'm sure you've heard of people who have personal brands, right? So it could also be about a person influencing the perception of people about how they see you, what they think about you, what they think about the business that you run, and the kind of service that you provide. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some statistics here, because I think it's important for us to back it up with data. So you're not like, oh, Wemimo came into this session and she's just telling us it's good to brand, But here's research here, okay? So you see, according to Forbes, presenting a brand consistently across all platforms can increase revenue up to about 23%. And that is something. So if you're running a business and you spend quality time presenting your brand consistently across platforms, you have the high chance of increasing your revenue because you're creating you're creating a positive public perception. People are getting to know about your business and the things that you do. According to Contently, about 61% of people are more likely to buy from companies that deliver unique content. And so you see people that sell things. Sometimes you wonder, like, do I have to be on social media? Do I have to be on Instagram? Do I have to be on Facebook? Oh, I don't really like social media. I just want to just be in my corner and run my business. Right? Have you ever heard people say things like that before? I just want to be in my corner. Do I have to do social media? This social media is too stressful. Okay, do I have to do marketing? I just wish I could just run my business and get things done with. While that is great, you need to be able to present your brand consistently across platforms. You need to be able to create unique content that makes you stand out among your competitors. And just to say that even if you're running a nonprofit business, you still have competitors. So it's important to stand out in the midst of the crowd. According to Demand Metric, consistently presented brands are 3.5 times more likely to enjoy excellent brand visibility than those with an inconsistent brand presentation. So when you show up consistently, when you show up over and over again, you're highlighting your products, you're highlighting your services, you're highlighting the benefits that your organization brings to the community or to your country or to your state or your province or whatever it is, and you do that over and over again, you're 3.5 times more likely to enjoy brand visibility than those that don't show up consistently. And lastly, again, according to demand metric, it says that 82% of consumers feel more positive about a brand after reading customized content. Okay, note that word, customized content. So it's not just content for the sake of content. It's not just, okay, this is it and that's it, and you just push it out there. It's content that is made and created specifically with your target audience in mind, okay? Please take note of that. And I hope you're taking notes as we move along. And feel free, if anything pops up in your mind, feel free to throw it in the chat as we move along, and we'll be having a question and answer session to address your questions. All right, so tell me, okay, remember I said I want this session to be very interactive, so I'd love to hear from you. What comes to mind when you see these brands? Okay, so we have on the screen, we have the World Health Organization, we have Toyota, MTN, Unilever, TEDx, IVTC, quite a number of brands that I believe that we are all familiar with. Or is there anybody here who's not familiar with any of these brands? Okay, use the chat, let me hear from you. Oh, someone says TEDx, ideas worth spreading. Oh my goodness, did you see that? Ideas worth spreading. Thank you, Akim, for that. Their tagline stuck for you, and you remember that. Okay, Fred says, when I see the red calligraphic one, I see a thirst quenched. I believe that should be Coca-Cola, Fred, is that correct? People, the kind of advertisements that they create, just create this impression that if you really want to eat, you want to eat and you want to feel full and satisfied, and you want your thirst to be quenched, you should have a bottle of Coke beside you. But technically, is that correct? Doctors will say, no, you should actually have water. So if you want to quench your thirst, you should be talking water, not necessarily Coke. But Coke has been able to build a brand such that you're thinking, oh, I'm thirsty, it's very hot today, and you're thinking of Coke. You're thinking of a bottle of Coke to quench your thirst. Oh, Charles, I see Unilever. You recognize Unilever. So what comes to mind, Charles, when you see Unilever? What comes to mind? Tell me in the chat. What comes to mind when you see the name Unilever? James, I see WHO. Wow, health solution. Great, exactly. You know that World Health Organization provide health solutions globally. Yes, and then you see Toyota, you see durable, strong vehicles. Okay, nice. They've been able to build a brand and created a presence around that. Oh, Charles, you meant Unilever. You're not familiar with Unilever. Oh, okay. But it's interesting, you may be familiar with their products and not know that they are products made by Unilever. Some of their soaps, some of their probably toothpaste, shampoos. Sometimes when you go to a shop to buy something, you can check the back to see. But Unilever is definitely a name that produces a lot of household products. Putan, I see Jumia. Okay, so when you see Jumia, you think of online shopping, right? So there's something that stands out for you. Thank you so much, everyone, for throwing in your thoughts there. There's something that stands out for you when you see a brand name. Okay, someone says Guarantee Trust Bank offering financial services. Yes, you see a certain name, and then it reminds you of something that they are known for. Oh, DSTV, someone's Jean. DSTV for you is sports. Okay, when you want to watch soccer, you want to watch the latest games, and then you do DSTV. That just shows you how powerful those brands are, and the kind of recognition, the kind of image and impression they have created around their business names. Can we see the next slide, please? So it just tells you something. If you've been following over the last couple of minutes and the things we've been talking about, it just tells you that for you to effectively brand, there has to be consistency. Okay, there has to be a story that you are telling over and over again, and you are very conscious about the public perception. So you're consistently telling a story to create an impression in the public. Abdul, I see that GT Bank for you. GT Bank is a friendly bank that truly cares, and this permeates through every sphere of their business. Can you imagine that? I'm sure I'm like, do you have a family member in GT Bank, Abdul? Maybe not. Do you have anybody that works there? Maybe not. But somehow you've been to GT Bank, you bank with GT Bank. you've seen their adverts. They show lovely looking customer service team members who smile at you and things and give you this impression that GT Bank is a friendly brand. And if you want a bank that is friendly, come to GT Bank. Same thing, Gabriel, UNICEF, you think of children, so it's interesting how, how brands have to be properly wired. Oh, Abdul says, yes, I have a colleague of mine that works there. Okay, so is that why you think they're friendly? Because your colleague works there? Okay, and Akim says Dangote's richest man in Africa, that the brand inspires you. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. They're friendly as well. Yes. All right, next slide, please. So I'm hoping that this has helped to spark some ideas in your mind, even as we're starting this session. So why is branding important? Now we've talked about UNICEF, we've talked about Dangote, we've talked about GT Bank, talked about Coca-Cola, talked about all of these brands and the things they are doing. And somehow it has created an impression in your mind about the brands and what they believe in. So tell me, why is branding important then? Why do you need a brand? So why is it a big deal? I mean, even from just talking about the different brands, why is it a big deal? Miriam, thank you for that. You said for credibility. Please take note of that. Very important point. When you create a brand and you're consistently telling your story, you're consistently telling your message, you're showing up over and over again with the same message. You're not showing up today saying one thing and then showing up tomorrow saying something different, but you're showing up again and again saying the same thing. It helps you build credibility. Christine says to gain higher competitive advantage in the market. Absolutely, yes. Miriam, to make your mark. Charles, for you to stand out. Yes. Next slide, please. So branding is important. It helps you to make your mark. It helps you to stand out. There's something unique about your brand that people want to see. But if you don't tell that story, if you're not highlighting why it is important to engage with your brand, why should they buy from you and not buy from the next person? Why should they engage? Why should a donor support your community-based organization and give you funding to do great work that you're doing? Why should it be you and why not the next organization? All right. So these are all all around the branding and how you tell that story to the world. So why do you brand? When you brand, it makes your business or organization automatically recognizable. Okay, somebody was, I think it was somebody in the chat said when we showed the slides previously that said Coca-Cola, somehow he sees the calligraphy, he sees the way the words are written, and then he thinks, I think, okay, it's Fred. He sees the way the red calligraphy is written, and he just thinks of quenching his thirst. Okay, I'm thirsty, I want to quench my thirst, let me go buy Coca-Cola. Right? It makes, even in the desert, even in the places where there are not so many people, somehow Coca-Cola is present all over the world. It makes, they have been able to build their brand presence such that they are recognizable wherever you go. And that's one beautiful thing about branding and why it's important to brand. Another thing is it helps you to build trust with your customers and your stakeholders. Right? So you're doing a lot of great work, but if nobody knows about the work you do, if people are not able to talk about your work with consistent messaging, if your social media platform or your website or your any of your communication materials whatsoever, if they are not consistently telling that story, telling what makes you unique, then you're not able to build the trust with your stakeholders, with your customers, with your donors, right? So one of the things that branding does, consistent branding does, is to help you to build trust with your customers and your stakeholders. It also helps you to gain competitive advantage. All right. So there's so many people out there who are who provide the same service that you provide. There's some, I'm sure if you think, just even in this session, just think through a little bit, just think through and look at your community, visualize your community, visualize your country, visualize the state, the province where you work in. You would see that you're not the only one providing the service that you currently provide. So someone was talking about, I run a microfinance bank. I'm sure you're not the only microfinance bank, right? So it would then be, how do you position yourself in such a way that you gain competitive advantage, regardless of other people that run the bank. I think that was Fode who said that. So how do you position yourself so you gain competitive advantage above other people who run similar businesses, who provide similar services like you do? Another thing why it's important for you to brand, it helps you to connect with your audience on an emotional level. And I think this is one of the beautiful things about branding, and particularly when you tell your story. You tell your story. When I say you tell your story, you tell the why behind your business. Why do you do what you do? Why did you decide to run a community-based organization? I met somebody once who I met her, as a friend. She's also a professional colleague, a communications colleague, and she was here in Canada, working, good job. She was doing great, but then she decided to go back to Africa, to go back to her country, to start an organization, particularly addressed at healthcare. And just listening to her and hearing the backstory around why she wanted to start that organization. She had a personal experience. She had somebody die, a close loved one that died because there was not, they couldn't access proper health care. And that started something, that ignited something in her heart. She decided to start an organization that would be able to address the gaps that she had identified in healthcare in her country. And now that's her story. That's her why. For you, what is your why? All right. So even as you're working on your brand and you're trying to position yourself, for donor funding, position yourself for community support, position yourself as a business that people should come patronize, come buy from. Tell your story. Because many times people don't just buy because, oh, it's another shop is opened again, or another platform is open, there's a website, there's a new website, let's go buy from them, or there's another organization, let's go engage with them. They want to hear the backstory, and that's why they would want to engage with you. All right. So when you do that, it helps you to connect with your audience on an emotional level. So then when I think of that organization, if they ever wanted funding and they reached out to say that, are you willing to support our organization? We're trying to provide ambulances in a certain city. I'm more inclined to support, because almost everybody can relate to healthcare problems in a place like Africa. So another thing that branding helps you do is to help you generate sales and support for your business or your organization. Next slide, please. All right. So sometimes you keep thinking, and I know that when we started the session, we had some people say, oh, I'm just about to start my CBO. I'm just about to start my NGO. I'm currently running my NGO. I'm trying to work on my brand, right? So the question then is, so when exactly should we start defining this brand, right? So should I start the NGO first? Should I come up with my vision and my idea and start running it, test it out first and see? Then I'll now decide the kind of brand I want to create. Is that what I should do? Or at what point should I create my brand? Next slide, please. You should create it as soon as possible now. Okay. So whether you have already started your organization or you are still thinking about it, still even if it's just in black and white, you're still visualizing and picturing and drawing up the vision and the plan. Start thinking about the kind of brand you want to create for it. All right. If you've already created the organization, then start thinking about the brand you have started to create and decide, reflect, is this what I really want? Is this what I want people to remember me for? Is this what I want people to think about when they hear of my business name, or when they hear of my nonprofit organization, or when they hear of my community-based organization? So if your answer is no, then you need to start tweaking that now. But if your answer is yes, oh, I think I'm on track, I think that my organization is doing great, then fantastic. You can continue to build that moving forward. All right, next slide, please. So let's talk a bit about some brands. Remember, I said that I'm going to have you do some classwork, so get ready for that. But let's talk about a bit about some brands and the kind of brands that exist. And feel free to start brainstorming, start thinking, okay, where does my brand fall into in all of this? And your brand may not totally fit here, it's fine. If you have a different brand that doesn't fit anywhere in this, feel free to drop that in the chat. It would be nice to hear about your brand. Right. So you could have, for example, people who have personal brands, okay? Personal brands, and it could be a brand about, and basically the personal brand is it's a brand surrounding themselves as a person. And one example that comes to mind right now is somebody like a Nelson Mandela. Now, Nelson Mandela is no more today, right? But his name stands for something. Can you put in the chat for me? I'm sure everybody in this room right now knows Nelson Mandela, even if some met him in person, some have never met him in person, some just read about him, you just watch on the news, you read one thing or the other. But when you think about Nelson Mandela, what comes to your mind? You can put it in the chat. Let me see what's coming. Oh, someone says freedom. Teresa, freedom comes to mind when you think of Nelson Mandela. For the freedom and equality. James, integrity. Christine, liberation. Fantastic. Yeah, so you think of a Nelson Mandela, and he, even though he's no more there, his brand still stands. Akim, I love that. Freedom. I see that hand. Absolutely. Okay, so that became a brand. It became like a signature of some sort for Nelson Mandela. Freedom and selfless leader. Thank you, Napiok. That became something that he was known for, even in life and in death. All right, and that's such a powerful brand. All right. Another, feel free to throw in the chat if you can think of any other personal brands that come to mind. Another type of brand, again, could be corporate brands. All right. So you have organizations that have corporate brands, and some of it we had shared even from just looking at the screen and identifying different brands. Okay, so you could have corporate brands, for example. How many of us know Procter and Gamble? Procter and Gamble, they're the ones that produce many of the products that we know. Interestingly, at least Pampers. Do people know Pampers, Oral-B toothpaste? They produce shampoos, Head and Shoulders, like different products that they've produced over time. Feel free to throw in the chat if you can relate to some of these brands that I'm mentioning. All right, so you have brands like Coca-Cola, all right, for example. These are corporate brands. They've built a brand presence around their business names, all right. And some could be non-profit organization. I just shared, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola. Those are profit-making organizations. But you could have those corporate brands that are non-profit corporate brands, okay. So you have like UNICEF, for example. I think it was someone who put in the chat that when he thinks of UNICEF, he thinks of children, right? They've been able to create that, and it's so strong. Thank you, Jane, for that. Absolutely. Samsung, thinking of a corporate brand, Jane thinks of Samsung. Samsung, and for many of us, I know Samsung produce different products that we know: mobile phones, refrigerators, TVs, okay, Techno, right? So these are brands that you can relate with, right? They've been able to build an identity around who they are, what they stand for as an organization. Non-profit brands, talk about Wells Mountains Initiative, which is the organization hosting this. All right, so you have Save the Children, you have lots of non-profit brands, so such that when those brands are mentioned, certain things come to mind instantly. You can think of product brands, okay? Some of us started to talk about some of these product brands. In fact, a company like Techno, a company like Samsung have not only built a corporate brand around their business names or what they do, but they've also been able to provide brands around the kind of products that they provide, which are, I talked about TV and mobile phones and things like that. Procter & Gamble, how many of us know Pampers? Okay, we at least most people know Pampers. Pampers, diapers, baby diapers, right? Toothpaste, etc. You could have geographic brands. Okay, so when you think of Dubai, what comes to mind when you think of Dubai, for instance? You can put that in the chat as well. Dubai has been able to do a fantastic job building a brand around their country, around the cities, the countries, the edifices, and all the nice things they have, such that you think of Dubai and you're just imagining, oh, I want to travel. Or you think of Kenya, I think of Kenya and I think of, I imagine Kenya in my mind and I think of elephants and hippos and rhinos. I think of animals. Like, it's such a beautiful place to go. Somehow they've been able to build a brand around their country and around what it is they represent. Oh, I see skyscrapers. Yes, Dubai, known for skyscrapers, luxuries, vacation, center of tourist attraction. Absolutely, you're so correct. Yes. And so when you talk about service brands, you could also look at like MTN, Vodafone, and the likes. Google, for instance, you're thinking of, oh, I'm looking for the meaning of something, and somebody says, oh, Google it. But the reality is that Google is actually it's the company, it's the company, and the service they provide has now become synonymous with the organization. So just giving you an idea of how you can create such a strong brand, to create such a strong brand in such a way that people think of a service, people think of a product, people think of an experience and think of your brand. All right, and you also have event brands as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so you could have, so look at this, look at what's on the screen. All right, a bit of thought process. This is the first part of a series, and the second part we're going to be doing a lot of more. But I'm just getting you to start to think about these things and get your thoughts going there. So when you look at this, for instance, we talked about branding as non-profit organization. Look at this carefully. Okay, look at the brands on the screen. All right, now let's go to the next slide. Okay, so you look at this brand as well. Okay, some of it I had shown to you previously. All right, next slide. So what makes them stand out? Can you put in the chat? Tell me what makes them stand out. Feel free, if you want to look at it again, they can slide it back for you. But what makes them stand? Someone says they are all corporate brands. Okay. What makes them stand out? And to know that they're not the only organizations running the kind of businesses or providing the kind of services they provide. There's something that stands them out from their competitors. Feel free if you think of anything else. Someone says simple but unique. Okay. Their logos make them stand out for you, Christine. Thank you. Any other? Okay. I see logos. The organizational impact. Christine says consistency. Yes, because they have been able to consistently pass across a message, somehow that has stuck with you. Somehow that has given you the impression that this is what these people stand for, because over and over again, they show up with these messages that are clear. All right, next slide, please. So now let's talk about your identity. Okay, we've talked about other people's brand identity. We've brainstormed around it. We've thought about, all of the things that make them unique and the things they're doing differently, and the emotions they make you feel when you think about their brands, the thoughts that come to your mind when you see their logos and things like that. So now let's talk about your own brand identity. Next slide, please. So now, how do you define your brand identity? It's great that all of these other organizations have done a fantastic work. And the truth is, many of these organizations have been running for years, right? Years of starting and failing, years of trying again, trying something, it didn't work, try another one, it didn't work. They've had their times of rising and falling and tweaking things here and there to become the brands that you now know today. They've, again, done things consistently such that, I'm sure that if you can reflect a little bit, you can think of a Coca-Cola advert as a child, even though you are now an adult, but you probably can remember some things they had done, some of the adverts they had shown over the years as a child. Over and over again, they've consistently used the color red, for example. They've consistently shown images. Their advertisements always show people, they show somebody who is thirsty, who is taking a drink, or who is taking a bottle of Coke, or they show things that relate to happiness, for example, and they say Coca-Cola open happiness, right? They've had a tagline like that at some point, Coca-Cola open happiness, or things like that. And so it's now time for you to start to think about your own business and your own brand. What is your brand story? Okay, why did you start that organization? Why didn't you, for example, choose to do a 9-to-5 job? Why did you choose to run an organization in the locality where you currently run it? Someone talked about the microfinance bank. Why did you choose to start a microfinance bank? Why not another type of business? All right. What's the backstory behind what you're doing, whether it's a profit-making venture or a non-profit one? Okay, and I want you to take note of these things. All right, so and what is the mission of your brand? So you've mentally identified what your brand story is, the backstory. I told you, I gave you an example of a colleague whose backstory was that she had a family member, she lost a loved one due to health challenges in her country in Africa, and she decided that she wanted to start an organization to address health challenge. Decided to start an organization that provides ambulance services for people, so that when they are stuck in a rural area and they are not able to access healthcare, her organization is able to be there for them. That's her brand story. That's the backstory behind why she's running that. But what about you? Okay, so what's the mission behind your brand? What are you aiming to achieve? Okay, these are questions that you need to ask yourself. Okay, so for you to define your brand identity, these are questions you need to ask yourself. Okay, the third thing will be, how would you describe your brand? It's important for you to know how you would describe your brand. Describe your brand. Okay, again, I'm hoping that you're taking notes as we're speaking. Describe your brand in your own words. How would you describe your own brand, right? And because if you don't know how to describe your brand, then people on the streets can call your brand anything, right? So you need to decide clearly what your brand is and how you want people to describe it when they think about you. You need to think what makes you different from your competitors. And like I said, even if you're a non-profit organization, you have competitors. There are people who are running non-profit organizations like you, who are running community-based organizations, non-governmental organizations, just like you. If you say, oh, my non-governmental organization is focused on providing water in our community, I'm so certain you're not the only one. There are other organizations too that are providing water. Even if it's not the exact geographic location, that can be another thing, right? But you're sure that somebody else somewhere is doing something at least close to what you're doing. Your competitor can even be the government. All right, so it's okay, I'm providing water, but yeah, the government is also trying to provide water in some way. So how are we, what gaps are we trying to fill? What exactly are we trying to what problems have we identified that we're trying to address? Okay, what makes you different from the other people who are solving the same problem that you're trying to solve? Another thing that you want to consider is, who are your target audience? Okay, and someone can say, well, my target audience are women. Fantastic, your target audience are women. But even with women, it's not just you don't have, even with women, there are several subsets of women. Is it pregnant women? Is it single women? Is it women with, with children? Is it, so you need to be conscious of the subsets of who your target audience is, and you need to be able to clearly define that. Okay, and how would your audience summarize your brand, and what type of experience do you want people to have when they come in contact with your business or your organization? All right, next slide, please. Okay, so, and this is just a quote that sort of stuck with me. It says that your brand story is important. All right, the brands that win are the brands that tell a great story. When it comes to transmedia storytelling, the brands that win are the brands that tell many great stories and are able to connect them all together. And this was said by Mick Joel, the president of Miriam, a global marketing agency. All right, so all of this thought process, this session is to get you thinking even as we get into the next session, to then see, now that you have thought about these processes, how do you then apply them? All right, next slide, please. We'll be wrapping up soon. And if you've got questions, again, put them in the chat. I want you to do a quick activity, some of which you probably have already started. But the activity is simple and just a couple of minutes, 3 minutes maybe, pretty fast. From this conversation so far, what is your brand identity? You can please go back to the slide where I talked about defining your brand identity. Thank you. So here's the activity I want you to do. Just in your notepad, think about it. Why did I start this organization? Why am I doing this? Why am I running this business? Who are the people I want to speak to? Please write it down in your, and you can, if you feel confident enough to share some of your thoughts, feel free to put them in the chat, okay? Why am I doing this? How do I want to describe my brand? How do I want people to describe my brand when they think about my brand? Okay, what type of experience do I want people to have when they come in contact with my microfinance bank, or when they come in contact with my community-based organization? Or who are my target audience even? And like I said, don't just say, oh, my target audience are young people, or my target audience are men or women. Break it down even further, because even among young people, you have several subsets. Okay, there are young people who are in school. There are young people who are out of school. There are young people, like, you can actually sit down and break it down in details. Who are the people you're trying to speak with? Okay, and like I said, if feel free to show it in the chat if you'd like to share some of your thoughts. That would be great to see. If not, I would take some of those. I would love to hear your thoughts in the next session on Thursday, where you can then tell me what you were able to come up with as we start to really craft the brand and piece it all together. Oh, I have someone here. Fode, thank you for that. Just a snapshot. Okay, Fode says, out of the difficulties I have seen local community businesswomen face over the years in accessing financial services, I decided to form the Women Empowerment Lending Microfinance Limited to help address the limited access to credit facility in order to promote financial inclusion by offering micro loans to locals. That is beautiful. That is beautiful, Fode. Thank you very much for sharing that. So now you've started to think of those things. Still try and see if there are questions here that you haven't totally answered. So when you say women, all right, when you say local community business women, what type of business? So you might need to do a bit of thought, okay, further. And some of the things I want you to also highlight is what makes you different from your competitors. Are there other organizations providing microfinance services too? Okay, what is it about your service that would make them want to come to you and not the next person? All right. Okay, and how do you want your audience or your target audience to see your brand? But this is fantastic food. I totally love what you have shared. Because of time, let's go into the next slide, please. Okay, all right. So branding is not merely the design of your company. I thought to mention this because I know sometimes we think, okay, branding, well, it's about the colors, it's about my logo. Someone talks about the calligraphy on Coca-Cola. We'll get to that in the next session. But it's not just about all of those designs and those pretty looking things, okay? In fact, you cannot design a brand. Creating a logo design and visuals is part of branding. But first, you need to define your brand values. You need to define your identity. You need to define your voice. You need to define your personality. You need to define the story behind your brand, okay? Before you can then go into what kind of colors do I pick? What kind of fonts do I pick? And things like that. What kind of pictures do I use to represent my brand? Akim says we skipped a slide. I'm not sure we skipped a slide. But I think that should be it. Okay, and I wrap up here. Akim, don't worry, we're right on track. I'll stop here. Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions or any thoughts? Bonnie, feel free to
yes,
you have the floor.
there is quite a number of questions that are coming up. on the Q&A, and if I can just run through them quickly. We have quite a number of questions coming in. And let me begin with Patrick. Patrick said, how do you differentiate branding and advertising? In the case of a nonprofit organization, what are the activities which are done in branding?
Thank you very much for that. So branding and advertising. Advertising is part of the things you do to push out your brand. Okay, it's part of the things you do to get people talking about your brand and talking about the products or services that you provide, right? So in the case of a nonprofit organization, your branding, part of it, in fact, as storytelling is a major part of that brand that you want to highlight. Okay, I know there's other parts around like your colors, your fonts, and things like that, but how you tell your story is a big part for a nonprofit organization, for a non-governmental organization, Patrick. You need to be able to document the things and the impact that you're making. So it's not just enough to say, oh, we reached 10,000 women in so and so community, we provided water in this community, we did this, we did that, we are doing amazing, all right? People need to see that you're doing amazing. People need to feel that you're doing amazing. People need to hear from your target audience that truly Patrick's organization is doing amazing. Okay, so and the interesting thing about a typical NGO, much more than your own adverts. As a matter of fact, you may not even be able to do so much personal adverts per se, but the people that you support will become sort of like a mouthpiece telling others about the impact of your work. All right, the stories you're able to tell is what will get donor funding for you, is what will get donors saying, okay, we want to support this organization because it helps Mame in Senegal to go back to school. And we see pictures of Mame in the school with school bag and, you know, looking all happy back to school. A donor is like, wow, I want to put my money in there to support this organization. Okay, so that's like the biggest advert you can do, much more than billboards or anything. For an NGO, you need to tell that story. Okay, next wow. Question.
Just like WMI, right? Fred is asking, in your branding, if you use a reputable company's brand, take for example Coca-Cola logo, and do a very little change on it. For example, if you remove the last letter A from the logo but retain the rest, can you face any legal implication from the company like Coca-Cola? Can you still be sued for removing the letter and using the calligraphic stylish writing?
Yes, that is criminal. They can actually sue you. They can get you to court for doing that. Companies actually trademark things, so their calligraphy, the way it is styled is trademarked. The way, the red, the exact shade, the like everything that you see for these brands are trademarked in such a way that you can't just take it and try to replicate it. It's a criminal offense and the person can go to jail for that. So it's better to make your own unique you know, logos and colors and whatever, and that way you're able to stand out. You don't want to be I mean, Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola. You are unique. You have something special. Tell the world your special story.
All right, Fred, you have heard it. The next question is coming from Samuel. Samuel is saying, one, does the coloring and symbolic images have an impact in the organization? How does one learn into certain colors? Like, for example, WMI green. Do they carry hidden meaning that the organization understands?
Yes, I'm going to say that question, keep it, okay, because we're going to address that question in the next session. But absolutely, yes, my answer is yes, and we'll talk about it more in the next session.
And then Akim Longway says, what are the recommended number of times one can rebrand if needed?
there's no recommended number of times. You can rebrand. Like if you start off with a brand and you see that this brand is not helping us to achieve the goals we want to achieve, it's not helping us to tell the type of stories we want to tell, it's not helping us to create the impression, the kind of impression we want our target audience to have, you can change that brand. Okay, and organizations rebrand every now and then. But again, you don't want to do it too often because remember we kept talking about consistency. So you want to be able to maintain that consistent messaging, etc., in people's minds so that they remember you. All right. So there's no restraint. My recommendation would just be, you want to do it once, get it right, and then go with it. But as you move along, if you see that there's anything that needs to be changed, you can change that. But you shouldn't do it too often so that you don't get lost in the mind of your audience.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Wemimo, for this wonderful session that you have taken us through creating your brand identity. I'd like to give you 1 minute to wrap it up, then we will close the session.
Okay, just to say thank you so much for having me. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to connect everybody. Feel free to reach out. You can reach out on LinkedIn. My name is Wemimo Onikan on LinkedIn. You can reach out there and you can, we can chat if for instance, you're struggling with your brand or anything like that. Or if you have questions outside of the questions you've asked, I'm happy to also answer and provide clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, the large audience that has joined us this beautiful day. And if you have learned nothing, don't forget that a brand is a voice, and a brand and the product is a souvenir. Your brand is this is what I learned. Your brand is what people talk about when you leave the room. And that is what they will know about you. And I also learned that your brand isn't just not your name or the name of your company or the name of the organization. It is not the tagline that you put on, like you are branded, for example, myself, branded the way I look. It is not the logo that I wear. It is not the tagline, but it is creating the perception to win the clientele into your products and services. Just like WMI has done, and you can be part of that. Today, we have handled branding, brand identity, creating brand identity. Watch out for part 2 coming up on Thursday. You will love it and will be more practical. Today, we're understanding the preamble of branding. Just watch out for the part 2 coming up on Thursday, right here on the WMI Academy. Thank you very much for joining in. And on behalf of WMI, I would like to say thank you very much, Madam Onikan, for sparing your time in this beautiful day, your morning hours in Canada. And we're grateful that you have imparted a lot of lives here and will continue to impart more. We're looking forward to yet another session this Thursday with you. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.